I'm not just telling a story, but I want the listeners to understand that when you want to go after your dreams and your goals, it's okay to pivot. It's okay to move from
Right.
your comfort zone. It's okay to move states, right? People say I'm in California, I can't find deals. Move. You're not a
Yeah.
tree. You don't have
Yeah.
to be in one place, right? I'm speaking to you, Shannon,
Right.
from a different part of the world, right? So you can
Yep.
flex and you can move.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Real Estate Rundown. I am your host, Shannon Robnett. Today, we've got a friend of mine, Ola Dantis, who comes to us all the way from London via Houston, Texas. So, Ola, thanks and welcome to the show.
No, thank you so much, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
So, Ola, we can tell by your accent you're from London. You're now living in Texas, but tell us a little bit about your story and how you came into the multifamily investing world, and how you went from London to Texas.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you so much. Yeah, so there's a whole story, on that, but basically, my wife had always wanted to move to the US because her father is actually American, and she got a job in one of the most beautiful places in the world, Orlando, Florida, Disney World. And I remember her calling me and say, she was actually interning at the time, in the US and from the UK. And she said, "Hey, you should come check it out." So obviously, I jumped on the plane, and I'm a window seat guy. So I was just kind of looking down and seeing, like, suburbia America and how symmetrical the houses are and beautiful, the greenery, and just from the sky. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is a very nice place. Nobody told me about this place called America. Anyway, anyway, landed, obviously, as everybody knows. Orlando, Florida is beautiful. Florida is beautiful. And I was like, wow, this is nice, but cut the long story short there. 2 years later, we moved to America, my wife and I. And, shortly thereafter, really plugged into the, American dream, right? So there was nothing wrong with that. I just kind of realized after a little bit after doing that, it was kind of the same thing, going to work, coming back home, doing it again, go to work, drive home, traffic, do it again. So I started to think, is that it, or is there something more? So that's kind of how my journey started. Kind of that thinking of, is there more to life than this?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I remember I was 22 years old and I had that conversation with my dad, who was an entrepreneur himself. And I just asked him, I said, "Dad, is this what you do?" And he says, "Oh, for the next 10 or 15, maybe 20 years, that's what you do." And then life really starts to happen. And I went, "What? Wait a minute. I got to keep doing this for 20 years." But there's some truth to that. But
Hmm.
there's some of that you have the control over. So what was the thing, Ola, that made you go, "This is insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I'm going to change that." What was that you just said enough?
Yeah, I mean, think about it, right? You know, uh, as real estate entrepreneurs, right? We use we look a lot of data. We use a lot of charts, and a lot of insights, right? Actionable insights. So if you look at your life as a data point, which was in my case, I would wake up, brush my teeth, take a shower, hopefully, go to work, right? And I realized this pattern, right? And I knew if I continued doing that, my life would look the same for the next 20, 30 years. Nothing would change, right? Yeah, I might get a blip, which is a promotion here and there, whatever. But I kind of thought, well, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to die. So I thought, I think there's going to be more, right? This is fun, but not fun enough, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. This is kind of how I was made. I don't know. Anyways, um,
I agree.
yeah, a friend of mine called me though. He's based in the UK, and he said, "Hey, I'm gonna be in Dubai meeting some investors, but I really need your help to basically, help my business." So when I got that call, I basically just, did what every smart man does. I prayed about it. And I asked my wife, this is way before, COVID-19 and everybody using
Right.
Zoom. And my wife was like, "Can you guys use Zoom, FaceTime? Why do you have to go all the way there?" And I said to my wife, hey, maybe if I learned something on this trip that could help our family. It was just me and my wife then, living in this luxury apartment in Maryland at the time. Anyway, I was on my way. I was on the plane to Dubai. Got to Dubai, obviously, and then I was expecting all the glamour and glitz that comes with that part of the world. None of that. Just about 3 days in a hotel room, just kind of masterminding on my friend's business. Ironically, his business is property investing, as it's called in the UK, real estate investing, right? So I kind of helped him restructure his business, create a hog chart, give him, some strategies and things like that, and kind of helped him out. But on my way back, I figured, hey, maybe I could, do this in America, right? I mean, I've been thinking of, is this it for life? Maybe this could be something, I could do on the side. So when I got back to the US, I went straight to my best friend, Google. You know,
Right, right.
yeah,
That
you
very
know,
knowledgeable friend of yours, right?
yes, I said,
Yeah,
hey, my friend, what is this real estate business thing that I keep talking about? What is going on here? So obviously, I did that, learned a ton, and then I stumbled upon a website called Bigger Pockets, right? And I realized, oh wow, I could learn a ton from this website. And then I stumbled upon their podcast, and I started
yeah,
listening to the podcast right from the very, first podcast, right? And everybody kept mentioning this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. So
yeah.
I, went to my second best friend, Amazon.com. Pay attention if you listen to this podcast, you can hear the sound of my voice, right? And I bought the
Right,
book, right? And the only way, Shannon, I can describe after reading that book was my brain got a uppercut of like, oh my goodness, whoever
right,
this guy is, he stole my idea. Even though he wrote the book in 1992, this is exactly what I've been trying to say.
right,
And this
right.
guy said it, eloquently, right? And then 3 months after that, we bought our first building. It was a duplex in a Class A area of Baltimore, Maryland. So that's kind of how it started. But I want to kind of add a little bit more to that, and I'm sure you have some questions for me. But we bought this duplex, my wife and I. We left our, the comfort of our, luxury apartment where we never have to care about property taxes. We never had to worry about what day the trash gets taken. We didn't have to worry about any of that, right? But basically, we had to move to this building, right, where we have to worry about property taxes. We were now, property owners, right? I have to worry about when the trash is taken. I never could find parking. So we left this comfort to become uncomfortable. It's almost like, why would you do that? But my wife and I, we were at home on a fateful night, doing what lovers do, cooking at night. And we
Yeah,
got talking. And, I told her, I was like, hey, since we bought this property, I now have a lot of money in my account every month. I just keep having money because I get paid. And, the tenants are paying most of the mortgage. I was like, if we could do this 5 times, we wouldn't have to go to any job, right?
right,
We wouldn't have to work
right,
anymore. And, shortly thereafter, we started dwelling.com, which is the logo. If you're watching this on YouTube, the logo
right.
behind you can see. And, we started buying larger apartment, buildings. And, shortly thereafter, we moved from Maryland to Houston because Houston is considered, well, Texas is considered the multifamily capital of the world, So we kind of moved here, maybe Florida as well,
You
but we moved.
know, it's starting to sound like you bought into the Texas idea that
I
Texas is
have.
the best at everything, right?
It is.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So I'm kind of mentioning all of these things because I'm not just telling a story, but I want the listeners to understand that when you want to go after your dreams and your goals, it's okay to pivot. It's okay to move from
right,
your comfort zone. It's okay to move states, right? People say I'm in California, I can't find deals. Move. You're not a
yeah,
tree. You don't have
yeah,
to be in one place, right? I'm speaking to you,
yeah,
Shannon, from a different part of the world, right? So you can
yeah.
flex and you can move.
You know, and it's funny because I've been doing Zoom calls now for about 2.5 years because, as you and I know, I told you my tax residence is Puerto Rico, so I was doing Zoom calls. So I can relate to your wife saying, "Well, why can't you just do a Zoom call? Why can't you go? Why do you have to go there?" But then again, I travel everywhere, and it's so funny because people say that to me all the time. Just like you said, you're not a tree. You know, why do you have to stay there? Why do you have to keep going to that job? Why do you have to keep looking in your neighborhood for a deal when you haven't seen a deal in your neighborhood for 10 years? You know, people like, it's almost like sometimes people like the misery of not being able to do what's so freeing and uncomfortable. You know,
It's fear.
it's funny because my wife and I have been uncomfortable most of our lives, right?
Hmm.
Because we're constantly growing,
Right.
right? And I hear that with your story, where if you've done all these things in 6 years, you know, then you've been very active in what you're doing, and you're constantly stretching. And if
Hmm.
you get a goal of a duplex, then you're thinking of a larger building. And if you get the larger building, you get a 24 unit or a 30 unit or a 100 unit, then the next goal is 200, right?
Hmm.
And so you're constantly stretching,
Hmm.
but in that uncomfortable spot is where you're really growing to become the person that can handle the next step, right?
Absolutely.
So, so
Absolutely.
Ola, I mean, what does that mean for you when you get uncomfortable?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a good question, right? There's a few things going on, right? A few things. I don't, for folks listening, maybe you're on the gym or you're driving to work or whatever, and you're like, well, I can't do the same thing this other guy is doing, because I've always been from Idaho, I'm a New York City boy, or whatever it is. There's always something, right? But you have to understand that your goal should be bigger than anything else. Your goal for yourself, for your family, for your future self, waiting for you 20 years from today. So
Yep.
nothing should come before that, right? Um,
Right.
so that's number one, right? And number two, you have to face your fears, right? And fear stems from uncertainty. So for those paying attention, fear stems from uncertainty. So now you might go, well, yeah, all of you spot on, bingo. Yeah, I don't want to just move to wherever in America. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm uncertain. So now start to paint a certain picture in your mind, right? Start that process, right? If it's, I want to move to a different state, take your family for a weekend in that state, get an
Yeah.
Airbnb, right? Right. Understand. Maybe you'd love it, right? You
Right.
don't know, but
Right.
you have to show up, right? Part of success is showing up. I'm painting a certain picture in your mind. Now, that's a physical thing you can do, right? To immerse yourself in that new reality. But of course, you got to do some back end work. Me and you, Shannon, were talking, right? You have to do the back end work, which is the ones
Yep.
nobody sees, right? I wake up at 4:50 every morning. I meditate. I try to go for my run or walk. I read. Do all that kind of
Right.
background work, right? Read the books, get a mentor, get the course, like do all that stuff. But then you have to go out there. You have to actually operationalize all the back end work, all the theoretical stuff. You have to put it into reality. So there's a lot of little steps. And if you get a good mentor, you have someone that can coach you. Those are the things they're going to tell you, right? Listen to podcasts like Shannon's, things like that, so you can hear other people's stories, and the road ahead doesn't look as uncertain or as scary as you think it is. America
Well,
is the best country on the planet. I say that to people and they get a strong reaction like, oh my goodness, no, what do you mean? What I've lived
yeah.
on three different continents, and this is one of the best. Well, this is the best, actually.
And the reality is we have the opportunity to fail, and so many people look at it that failure is so horrible, right?
Mhm.
But when you look at a toddler, when they're starting to learn to walk, everybody's encouraging them to fall down. Everybody's
Yeah,
encouraging them. Oh, look, he took 3 steps and fell over. She
yeah,
went 5 steps and fell over. And
yeah.
it's why when we get older, everybody goes, "Oh no, you can't fail." But it's the failures that have catapulted me to the next
Mhm.
level in everything that I've done, because I've been able to look at that sitting there, covered in dirt,
Mhm.
looking at what went wrong.
Mhm.
The rocket blew up in my face, and I'm looking at it going, I am that much closer to figuring out how to make this light bulb work, right? And
Absolutely.
and yet what you're saying is exactly that, because so many people, they get the education, They're smarter than you were when you bought your duplex. They're
Mm-hmm.
smarter than you are now, but they haven't bought
Mm-hmm.
anything because they have the analysis paralysis, because they're
Paralysis.
so afraid of doing something where the action is what takes those things from your mind and makes them the steps like a baby to pretty soon. Now you're walking, now you're running, now you're able to do all these things. And if everybody listening to this thinks they have to be perfect in order to do this, I can tell you that action, like Ola, just getting out there and getting that first duplex and then getting that reality of, you know what, I got to pay the trash bill. I got to pay the water bill. I've got to take care of my tenants. And then realizing that taking care of 2 is kind of like taking care of 20, kind of like taking care of 100, and being able to grow that into a business that is nurturing and taking care of everything that you need. So that's a really important point that a lot of people miss, is they get that they're listening to us, and that's great. That's part of the education. You want to be listening, but after you're listening, you want to be actioning. You want to be taking the steps. And so, Ola, as you went along your journey and you saw the steps that some were taking, what was a difficult step for you to take, and how did you position your mind to allow you to get over that? I mean, where was a big leap that you had to take that was just this fear that you talked about, this uncertainty, and how did you get your head around that and get past it?
Oh man, there's so many things. My brain is firing. I think I think the first one is, so we did this little tiny duplex and we're like, oh my goodness, we could do this bigger, right? So bigger means that you need to go buy an apartment building or buy something bigger, even if it's not, 100 units, could be like a 20 unit, right? And in my mind, I was like, well, I don't know how to do that. So I need to go to, somebody else that knows how to, right? But that somebody else requires me to pay, right? To get their time. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to drop, X grand down to pay this mentor, right? And that was a really tough thing for me to do then, right? But I realized that I wasn't paying anybody anything. I was investing in myself.
Right.
It's not like I
Right.
know. It's like going to university to be a doctor, right? It's not like you're paying anybody. You're investing that money in yourself. So I think that kind of radical mindset kind of helped me a lot to really think of, oh wow, hold on. If I need to go to this next level, it's a rite of passage, right? I can't just magically wake up and start buying apartments, right? So
Yeah.
for me, that was a very pivotal point in my career. But I kind of want to jump on that again and just kind of talk a little bit about what you mentioned about failure. So I was doing pretty well, and then I met a partner that said, "Hey, Ola, let's go start flip some houses down the street and make 50 grand." I was like, "Uh-oh. This sounds really good." I've proven this concept of multifamily buying a small duplex. It worked really well. And then I met this partner. I got the shiny object syndrome. So I left, I had to, right? Because in life, there's a price to pay. And I always had a little appendix to that. And that you always have to pay the full price. There's never a discount. In life, you have to pay that full price. Yeah. So basically, I started flipping. I flipped a few houses, but that took me away from buying more buildings. Like, because I was trying to be a perfectionist. I was there every day, dealing with the contractors. The first 3 letters of that word is the important part. So it was just really difficult. So I spent about 2 years doing this, flipping houses. But then when I went back to my multifamily syndication part, all my peers, they've been buying 100-unit building and 50-unit, and so you got to be careful with that too. And the reason I'm bringing this up is also like understanding focus, right? Right now, we've got a deal on the contract here in Houston today as I'm speaking to you, right? But I keep my focus, right? Because I don't want to. Okay, now I'm buying an apartment, then I want to do land, and then I want to flip, and then I want to do also. It's just going to be too much. So if you're listening to the sound of my voice, you have to keep that focus. We all have 24 hours in the day, 8 of which we should sleep, and the others we need to just stay focused and not be all over the place.
Right. And that's so true. And we look at those that are successful in the business ahead of us, or people like Elon Musk who have multiple companies, and we don't look at the journey that got there, right? We don't look at the business that was built that allowed Jeff Bezos to turn over one part of the business and go start another business. We don't look at what these people have in place, and the reality is so true that if you're not investing in yourself and you're not being single-minded in your focus, you can become a jack of all trades and a master of none, right? You can do all of these things halfway, and you can make half the money of everybody else and have twice the failure of everybody else, because you're always relearning how to do this one thing, right? And yet it's so important that you invest in yourself first, so that you can give back to your community, give back to your business, give back to your family. Because if you're not, if you're trying to figure out all this yourself, you're not taking advantage of all the things that are around you, right? I mean, there's all these great mentors. There's all this information out there. Just like you said, your best friend is Google. You can get a lot of this information, but you at least have to devour it. You have to ingest it. And then from there, you can decide, because I know a guy who does a massive volume of business of flipping houses, but that's all he does, right?
Yeah, that's his focus.
And he's happy with that. I talk to him about multifamily. He looks at me like I have three eyes, and when he talks to me about flipping, I get tired. That's a lot of work, So, but you're correct. To be your specialist and to be really good at the one thing and to continue to perfect that, that's why you wind up with the Joe Fairlesses of the world, and the Rod Khalifs. These guys, they do one thing. They do one thing incredibly well again and again and again.
Joe Fairless is my mentor. So I'll keep that in. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah. So when you see what they do, they make it look so simple because they've done it 150 times. And they just keep repeating and refining the same thing. And they get to the point where, they're so good at it. It's like watching a professional tennis player, they don't run around. If you and I go to play tennis, we're going to be running all over the court, all this motion and all of this activity, where they're just going to be, from here to here and make it look so easy.
Yep.
Because they're so practiced at their movements, So what would you say to the new person that's sitting and looking at it and they go, oh, but Ola, you don't understand.
I do.
When I do this and I had this tax thing, and then I had this bankruptcy thing, and I had all these things happen, and Ola, you don't understand. My life is so much more difficult than yours was. I didn't have that really, really, James Bond accent. I had just this Idaho accent. I can't talk to people like you do. How am I supposed to overcome that? What do you say to people that come up with all these reasons why they can't?
Look, this is what I'm going to say. First and foremost, wherever you think you're at, I've been there, right? I've been there, right? And as you said, there's always an excuse, right? It kind of ranges, but at the end of the day, you just have to figure out what those weaknesses are, right? And then use them to your benefit, right? And then you have to figure out what your strengths are and really double down on your strengths, right? Yeah. For instance, you might say, well, I don't have to speak to people, right? That's fine. What do you know how to do? Well, I'm very good at numbers, right? I'm very good at researching, right? So maybe you start, really small and maybe look at wholesaling, right? And, look at how you can underwrite some deals, and then find someone who is good in sales and send them out and partner with them. And they can go do the talking. You have to figure out what you're good at and what you're not good at, right? Remember my story of flipping? I'm just horrible at flipping. I don't have the temperament. I don't have the patience. I'm a perfectionist. I'm like, you can't paint like that. And the painter is like, I've been doing this for 10 years. You can't tell me how to paint. I'm like, yeah, but it's crooked. And the painter is looking at which part. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Why is something wrong with my eyes? So you have to know have to know thyself, right? And
Right.
at the end of the day, you have to have an overarching why. That is
Yeah.
very crucial. If there isn't a big reason why you want to be a successful human being, and there's nothing wrong with just coming to this part, which is the planet, and just living your life through, 70, 80, 90 years old, and just, you know, go to the next journey. But if you've made a decision to make something of your life, you got to be ready to pay the price. You got to be ready to
Right.
understand that, nothing in life comes without a price. And I always say there's always a price to pay and there are no discounts. You're always going to pay the full price.
Yeah. And it's funny because a friend of mine, Sam Martin, said in one of my very first podcasts, he said that you always have to show up into real estate with some part of the deal.
Mm,
Either you got the time, you got the money, you've got the expertise, you've got the line on the deal. You've got to have something. And to your point, that just says you've got to find out what you're good at. And it's funny, Ola, because we've all worked with the guy or the gal that thinks they're really good at this one thing, right? And they're not really good at it
they're
at
not good
all.
at it,
Right?
yeah. And everybody else is those apart from them.
Everybody, it's like King Julian in Madagascar. I'm really good at whistling, right? But you're not. You're terrible. You're not good at this. You have to be aware of that, and you have to bring what you have. But I have yet to meet anyone that doesn't have something that can be
That are
very,
good
very
at.
valuable in real estate,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
mean, somebody that's super organized is great
Mhm.
at due diligence, right? Because you can go through the checklist and you can make the checklist. And I'm not the checklist guy, right? I
Mhm.
can do my due diligence, but nobody knows what I did, right? Because it's kind of over there in a pile,
Mhm.
It's not organized, it's not shareable, it's not all these things. But, I know that there's a guy that that does that in my organization, and that's Chris, and he puts things together, and all of these different things. But if you sit here and come up with reasons why, I can't speak with people,
Mhm.
sure. But, like you said, like Sam said, grab part of the deal that you're good at, latch on to somebody else and go there so that you can bring that value, because in each person there is so much value.
Oh
And,
man, yeah.
I think we as human beings are so underutilized by ourselves.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
we we fear more about what other people think, or what we might fail at, or what might not get done. That we don't allow ourselves to really unleash the power that's inside of us.
Yes. Yes.
And the
Yes.
determination that we have. Well, I'm going to ask you honestly. If I came to you 36 months ago and I said, Ola, this is where your life is going to be in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, what would you have said to me?
I would be like, you're crazy. Like, well,
Yeah,
what are you smoking? I mean, either give it to me, let's
I,
share it, or you need to talk
I
to your
should be
dealer.
selling. I should be selling what I'm smoking, right? I mean, that would make me a lot more money. But I'm the same way. But it has more to do with the fact that once you buy the duplex and you see how that
Mm,
can be done, and
mm,
then you really start to apply the gas to it and really start to
mm.
push forward in what you
Yes.
know you can do, and you're succeeding at step 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, then you're able to really blow up this vision
Mm, mm,
and really
mm.
create the kind of lifestyle that you want. Which, Ola, I mean, let's be honest, you've done that. You've just this year you've bought what, 2 apartment
Well,
complexes,
we're
3?
about to buy one in a pandemic. We're about to buy one. We've got
Yeah.
one right now on the contract, and we're pushing that. But I've got to say though, Shannon, so there are a few traits to being successful, right? And number one is self discipline. Self is
Right.
the key adjective. Yeah, no one's gonna come and motivate and discipline and instill discipline in you. You has to be by yourself, right? That's all the work that you do when nobody's watching, right? I'm a millennial,
Right.
right? And we all love Instagram. We like to show off all the stuff we're doing. That's our generation. So it's not about
Right.
you taking a picture of the 5 mile run that you've done. This is when you do that in the wee hours of the wee hours of the morning. That is self-discipline, right? And somebody might say, what has that got to do with closing the deal? It's the same thing. It's the same exact, discipline, right? And then the second
Right.
thing is just really just having, that motivation to really succeed, right? And that also comes from having a good confidence in who you are, right?
Right.
Right now I call
Yeah.
myself a beaver, right? I'm a beaver, meaning I would nibble on an oak tree, a solid oak tree, until I take it down with my
Yeah.
two little teeth. Right, I'm not a
Yeah.
goat. I'm a beaver. I just go at it. Just go at it.
Yeah.
And that same kind of mentality is, I don't care if you're an oak tree. I'm a tiny little beaver, but I will bite till you go
Yeah.
down. I would
Yeah.
win. It's just that kind of beast mentality that you become unstoppable. It's as simple as that.
I never had a fear of beavers until you just describe it that way. Now I'm kind of fearful that you're gonna bite me until I give up. But it's so true, because if you really look at it and you look at the size of the bite, right? I mean, if a beaver looked at it and said, "So what you're saying is I have to bite this thing like 25,000 times,"
Yeah.
how many times would we as humans go, "I'm going to do this 25,000 times before this thing falls down. And then
Yeah.
as soon as this one falls down, I'm going to go over there and make that one
And
fall
do it
down. And
again.
then I'm going to
Yeah.
make this." Yeah. I mean,
That's
I'm
what
going to
I
spend
do.
my whole life biting things,
Yeah. You're not gonna stop me. I'm not going anywhere.
But that tenacity, that's so true with the tenacity. And you look at, what makes the people successful, and everybody
Mhm.
looks at it and says, "Man, Ola, you've been able to achieve so much," but it's been that tenacity. It's that, continuing to repeat the process and continuing
Mhm.
to stay after it and continuing to refresh your mind with more wisdom and
Mhm.
more mentorship, and you know all of those kinds of things that really have brought you to a point. It's, I was saying this to my brother, who is a home builder,
Mm.
and he's a perfectionist, and the guy builds an amazing house, not just because he's my brother, but it's funny because he's gotten to the point where he's so successful at what he does. He doesn't bid the houses for you. He interviews you and decides if he's going to be able to work well with you as a client and make your dream work with what he does, right?
Wow. Wow.
And I
That's
told him, I
fantastic.
said, "Man," and he's working with some world-renowned people, and it's amazing, because I said, "Mike, it only took you 20 years to become an overnight success. It only
Yep.
took 20 years of
Yep.
hidden work, of
Yep.
nobody seeing all the
Yep.
grinding and the
Yep.
shuffling and the
And the
being out there."
sacrifices.
Yeah, absolutely. To where you were down to your last nickel again and again and again, and you kept going. And Ola, you're saying the same thing, that it's that deep work that you're
Mhm.
doing when nobody's watching, when you're
Mhm.
not. This is not Instagram famous, when you're
This is
grunting
none
it
of
out.
that. Yeah.
I'm going to have to look at your Instagram. I don't know if you posted pictures of you reading a book, of, of,
there's
of you
there's a there's,
studying.
there's a few. You should check it out. Check it out.
Yeah, I'm going to scroll through there, see if there's one of that. But it's that stuff. It's the work that really has to happen, because we've all seen the people that have been able to get the growth,
Mhm.
and there's not the substance to sustain it, you
Mm.
know.
Mm.
And they get the program, and then boom, it doesn't work, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
they are not of the caliber to handle what's going on in the next steps, and put the teams together and
Mhm.
scale the production of what they're trying to do. So we've kind of discussed all of the the things that go into being the success.
Mhm.
But tell me, Ola, what, now that you've achieved some success and you're continuing to grow your business, and you've figured out the algorithm, if you will, and you've got a successful plan, what does that finally mean for you? Does that mean you could stop? Does that mean you could slow down? Does that mean you can delegate more? What does that mean to you, and what does that mean?
Yeah, definitely not going to be stopping anytime soon. definitely not going to be stopping anytime soon. I think for us, one of the premise of moving from Maryland to Houston is really to put a flag down, a dwelling flag, to actually really scale our business and go vertical, vertically integrate the business. Meaning, we'll do things like development, investment, and also property management. So really, for us, is really growing a business and providing jobs and providing beautiful communities for our residents, right, and providing great returns for our investors. Pretty much simple as that. So for us, yeah, we're definitely going to be busy. This few years, just really scaling up and building our portfolio, right? So for me, what I joke with my wife is, the story of my life is Ola makes all this money, Ola gives away all the money. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
the whole idea. Billionaires like Bill Gates are doing the same thing. So, a little person like me, I don't see any reason why we should take that philosophy. So it's really just really helping others. That's really huge for me. And that's
Mhm.
kind of the future, and really exciting. And of course, it's been an amazing journey, and it's still a lot going on.
And you touched on a thing here, and I saw this in your bio, but you're actually giving away houses.
We're trying to, yes. We haven't started. It's a dream,
Talk-
right? But basically, yeah. So the One House Pledge is essentially a dream of us giving a house to a family debt free, right? And want to do
Okay.
that either every year. And we're working on that, constantly, right? And just really finding, because on the Maslow hierarchy of needs, for any psychologist out there, shelter is just kind of one of the basics needs of a human being, right? And if you can
Right.
give a house to a family or a single mother, and mortgage free, they don't have to worry about paying the mortgage. I think that will radically change their lives and their families' lives, right, from them for generations to come. So that's really, kind of a really soft, it sits in a really good part of our hearts, and we're trying to do that. And of course, it's no easy feat, but we're trying to do that. We're striving for that.
It's no small task, but that just
Yeah.
shows how you really truly believe in giving back. A lot of people talk about giving back. It's easy
Right.
to talk about giving back.
Right.
It's not the
Right.
same as tipping your wait staff. Giving back
Yeah.
and giving away a free house are a little bit more than tipping your wait staff. So
Yes.
my hats off to you for seeing that and seeing the need in your community and being able to reach out and to address that.
Right.
So, guys, I hope you all got something from our guest today, Ola Dantis, who has really dropped some serious knowledge on us as far as mindset, as far as how he overcomes the fear that's in his life. But just like everybody, he's got that fear. So, Ola, tell us before you get out of here, where can we find you? What have you got going on, and where can we keep up with all the progress that you and your wife are doing?
Yeah, definitely. So, invest with Ola, you can see right here actually. It's investwithola.com, or and that will kind of just take you to our website, which is dwelling.com, DWELLYNN.com, or you could just, like I said, follow that link. Of course, I'm pretty much ubiquitous online. If you just Google my name, Ola Dantis, I'm everywhere. If you're on LinkedIn, I'm there. If you're on Snapchat, you'll find me. If you're on Instagram, that's my main one. So reach out, Facebook, whatever. Just
Awesome.
tell me you heard me on the Shannon show. Definitely want to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ola, for swinging by the Real Estate Rundown. Guys, that's going to wrap up our episode today. But be sure to check him out with investwithola.com or find him on Instagram. Let him know where you heard him. And thanks again for stopping by.